Thank you, Pilar. Dear Pilar, dear other speakers, dear colleagues from the European Parliament, in particular, dear Lambert van Nistelrooy, it's good to have you here again. Well, dear Mrs. Banu and representatives from the other European institutions, dear members and friends of European Internet Foundation. It's for me a great honor and a pleasure to be here and to share my thoughts on cybersecurity and in particular on the Cybersecurity Act together with you tonight. My report is not yet on the market. I nearly finalized my report, so actually you will hear something about it right now. It will go into the introduction late this week. And well, I think in a 2 weeks term it will be available, and I'm more than happy to learn, you know, what you talk, what your comments are on that proposal. I'm happy, but also to hear tonight from you, you know, as to whether you have some ideas which might enrich my proposal coming soon. Cybersecurity, of course, is of utmost importance, and I think it was really good that the European Commission came forward last year, or 2 years ago, I have to say, with a cybersecurity strategy for the European Union, for all member states, and I highly appreciate also the proposal which had been submitted to Parliament and to Council as regards the Cybersecurity Act. As I think that you all are aware of the details of the Cybersecurity Act proposal, I will concentrate myself now just to highlight 5 issues which I'd like to take up. And I start maybe with 2 main objectives which have also guided me in drafting my report. First of all, I think it's important, or what is most important for me, is that we need trust. From the perspective of industry as well as from the perspective of consumers, it is important that industry and users have trust and confidence in IT solutions, in particular with regard to the Internet of Things. It is a fact that the global digital revolution takes hold and proliferates into our economies, societies and governments. All our data is vulnerable. Cyber attacks, cyber espionage and cyber sabotage has enormously increased during the last 3 years, and for that, here in Europe, I think we have to react. And let me just talk about 2 shocking events which occurred some time ago. You might have heard that 2 weeks ago, newspapers announced that the German Foreign Ministry was under cyber attack. By sending an email attached with hidden coded instructions to the employees' Microsoft Outlook inboxes, hackers managed to get access to the Foreign Ministry's department, which is responsible for Germany's relations within the EU, with North Africa and with Russia. So highly sensitive, dear ladies and gentlemen. Today we know it was Turia, a well-known Russian hacker group, who has been able to abstract highly sensitive information about ongoing EU Brexit negotiations, as well as about EU talks with the Ukraine and with Belarus. So this is, from the political perspective, it's a disaster, you know, that sensitive data is now openly discussed in debates with people and groups who should not have had access to these information. And another shocking example is, especially for parents among us, I think, is certainly the story about Cyla, a Bluetooth-connected children's doll, which was designed to respond to the owner's questions by assessing the internet. You might all have heard about this doll. I have not explained you in further detail. At the end of the day, the German Federal Network Agency, the Bundesnetzagentur, issued a warning about the doll's smart technology, classifying it as an espionage device because the doll provides insufficient privacy guarantees about how captured data and personal information will be used in the meantime. The selling of Cyla, fortunately, is prohibited in Germany. So if you look around, we have a lot of threats which are there, and I think we have to react. And in order to rebuild or to build up trust. Otherwise, when we dream about autonomous driving, when we dream about smart homes, smart cities, whatever, if we do not really ensure our people that the devices used in the IoT world are secure and we can trust in them. I think all our wonderful ideas which we have will not fly, and for that I think it's important. And let me, as a starting point, also stress that I believe that Europe can become a leading player in cybersecurity. We have a strong industrial base in Europe, all over Europe, and working on improving cybersecurity with regard to consumer goods, industrial applications and critical infrastructure, I think is of utmost importance. So let me briefly take up some of the issues which have been discussed in the industry committee here in the European Parliament, which are discussed in Council, which are still discussed with the Commission and you as a representative of stakeholders involved. I'd like to talk first of all about the role of ENISA, and to bring it to the point, I think as also Pilar has stressed already, I think we need a strong mandate for ENISA, or to use other words or to rewrite it, I think ENISA cannot only be a mere secretariat, which is a little bit coordinating and advising on cybersecurity issues vis-à-vis the member states, but I think they should play a very important role. Of course, dear ladies and gentlemen, I'm aware of the fact that the ENISA still is a small agency. They have around, you are aware of that, 62, depending on how you count it, 80 experts in Athens and Heraklion. If you compare it with our German national agency, we have more than 800 people working on cybersecurity issues. The same is true with regard to ANSI in France and other national cybersecurity units. And also, if you look at industry, if you look at your cybersecurity units, you have 30, 40, dozens of people working on cybersecurity issues, or even hundreds of people. So if you compare the mere staff figures, you find out that really we have to go for a realistic approach. So I think we have to ensure also in the report and in this Cybersecurity Act that ENISA is going to ramp on, I would say, so that we get a strong mandate for ENISA, but taking into account that a close and structured coordination is of course necessary also with the national agencies. And if you have a look then at my report when it comes up, you will find that I really tried to find the right approach on that. Looking forward to what you are thinking about it. So that's what I think should ENISA do. Give them the chance to grow up. Maybe now it's a little child, but I think ENISA has the potential to become a really strong young man or young woman, and we have to deliver the legal framework and the legal basis for that. Of course, knowing that also as reaction on cyber attacks, you have to have also very strong national agencies. Second issue I'd like to address is the question of certification. This is, which is heavily discussed and debated everywhere where I go. One of the issues, first of all, is what is the scope of application, the scope of the proposal. Dear colleagues, dear ladies and gentlemen, I can only say I talked to a lot of stakeholders, and if you talk to 20 stakeholders, you get 21 answers on what the scope of application should look like. Should we concentrate on IoT devices for consumer products? Should we concentrate on industrial applications? How do we manage? When you have a look at how many IoT devices, billions are produced all over the world. So I think we should again also go for a realistic approach. But my feeling is we should not only just look at products, but we should look at the whole life cycle, and thus also processes have to be covered in the proposal. It's not enough just to look at one specific device or one specific service. I think the whole ecosystem has to be at stake, and I will propose that also in my draft report. As regards certification, I'm also incorporating the idea that we need a risk-based approach. This is very crucial to me. We already have a sort of risk-based approach in the proposal from the Commission, as the Commission is going for introducing different assurance levels in the proposal. I think this is a very good starting point, and I evaluated on that a little bit in more detail. the interesting question as regard certification is, do we go for a voluntary system or do we go for a mandatory system? The Commission is for a voluntary system subject to specific legislation asking for a mandatory system. I had also a long an open debate with a lot of people on that issue. And if you'd asked me 4 months ago, I would have said voluntary system is the right approach. But having talked to a lot of stakeholders, I now believe we need a sort of also mandatory system, in particular for products, processes, and services at the assurance level substantial or high, not for the basic. Insurance level or assurance level. I think that for that level we can go for a self-certification, and we make a reference to the new legislative framework. But as regards substantive assurance level and high assurance level, I will propose, depending on of course what colleagues will argue, but I will propose that we go for a mandatory system with that regard. And to be frank, I heard a lot of industry stakeholders telling me we have to go for a mandatory voluntary system at the beginning. Having had all these debates and discussions for months now, I learned, and I'd like to hear from you what your assessment is on that the more and more also European industry in particular is asking for a mandatory system. So that's what I wanted to stress as well. Next issue, and I'm nearly finishing now because I see that the first dish is already served. I also think we need to improve the governance of the system if we want that all actors are contributing to the cybersecurity governance structure. To keep it short, I think we have to go for a strong say of the member states as well as for industry participation. Well, you know that now the member states' role or the member state are grouped in the so-called the group, which is established under Article 53 of the proposal and which is composed of national certification supervisory authorities. I think we have to put them on equal footing with the Commission in the preparation process of a certification scheme. So according to the proposal, only the Commission can ask or can propose a certification scheme. I think also the member states should be in the position to submit proposals. And this is an issue where I still have to work out the details. You know that we also have a permanent stakeholder group established, and I know that Mr. Schanzes is one of the members, and I recall when we had our hearing, Mr. Schanzes, how you campaigned that, don't make the permanent stakeholder group too big, and don't include all societal groups into this stakeholder group. I think that's a good argument. I'd like to keep the permanent stakeholder group as it is, with some tiny little modifications. But I'd like also, and that will be my proposal in the draft report, that we arrange for a sort of ad hoc advisory group where industry can play an important role. And this ad hoc advisory group is also to be included in the consultation processes when talking about certification. So, coming to the end, what is also important for me is that, we are not only looking at Europe, but also looking around in the world. And, we have a lot of international standard organizations. I think we should also include them into our process, together with our European standardization organizations, such as CEN and CENELEC. So these should also be, I think, politically involved in the debates and in preparing also certification schemes. But details will be discussed later on. Summarizing or coming to the end, ladies and gentlemen, I think this Cybersecurity Act is a very, very important piece of legislation in order to to move on in finalizing the digital European era. And for that, I will speed up the Commission. My proposal on the report is now coming up. We have short deadlines agreed also with all our shadow rapporteurs, so we will speed up the process so that we have hopefully before the summer break already either a first reading arrangement or a mandate given to the rapporteur and the shadow rapporteurs in entering into negotiations also with the council. So that's, as regards the framework, the plan right now. I'm happy to hear from you what you think about my first description of what I'm going to implement in my draft report. Looking forward to our discussions. I wish you a good appetite and looking forward to our discourse in a couple of minutes. Thanks a lot.
Okay,